C'est avec beaucoup de plaisir que j'ouvre cette fin de semaine très chargée. Des discussions, des performances, des explorations ensemble. I would start by telling you a personal story of how I've come to be here this evening. Donc, je vais commencer en anglais, mais cette fin de semaine, on va parler dans les deux langues, anglais-français. On va faire quand même une bilingue, un programme bilingue. Je vous invite à tout le monde de parler soit français, soit anglais, comme vous voulez. On est aussi les traducteurs, les deux femmes qui vont chuchoter de le français à l'anglais, de l'anglais en français, s'il y a des gens ici dans la salle qui ont besoin. Donc, tantôt, on va arriver pour nommer ces femmes-là, puis on va vous inviter de présenter si vous avez besoin d'une traduction de l'anglais vers le français. Moi, je vais parler maintenant en anglais parce que c'est une histoire assez personnelle, puis je suis un petit peu plus à l'aise. Ça va? So, 3 years ago, almost exactly, it was April 2007. Charmaine Nelson, who I'm really pleased is here tonight, and she's going to be speaking a little bit later on the evening, called a conference at McGill University, where she's a professor of art history. And I attended the conference. It was during Passover. I remember very clearly. The conference was during Passover. And the conference was to mark the end of the British, in Britain, the slave trade. It didn't mean that it ended the slave ownership. It just meant that that was the law that was introduced to end the trade of slavery in Britain. And during the conference, I was rapt and I was totally, fascinated by all the different conferences and all the different events that were presented and the people who were speaking. But there was one gentleman, and I'm sorry I don't remember his name. I don't think I was even introduced to him. But he got up in the middle of the question and answer period, and he said something by the by, because his question really wasn't even pointed on this. But what he said by the by was, anyway, we all know that Jews were heavily invested in the slave trade. Now, I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish home, having Passover Seders every single year, and I've never heard that. I had never heard that Jews were part of the slave trade. And so I spent my Passover for the rest of it was really the first night of Passover, and so I spent the 7 days of Passover doing research, and I remember talking to Diana. I think I actually called you up. Did you ever hear about, Jews as slaveholders and as slave traders? And I checked in with all of my Jewish friends and my family, and I said, do you ever know about this? And no, but yet Passover is the holiday where we mark the freedom from slavery in Egypt every single year. There's a ritual that marks the freedom from slavery. So I did research. And from one end of the spectrum, where there are people who pronounced that Jews had everything to do, and it was only Jews who were responsible for the slave trade and the slave holder, to those within the Jewish community and the scholars who deny any responsibility whatsoever, there is a credible center that says, yes, not only were Jews slave holders, but they were slave traders, to the point where there were some slave ports that closed down the slave trade during the Sabbath. So, it's pretty disturbing stuff. Some books have come out since, And I was convinced that I needed to do something in response to this, to start talking about this, to start exploring what does this mean, to have that also as part of the heritage that I carry and that I live with and I pass down to my children who are both here tonight. I'm really pleased to see them both here. So I spoke with Joanne, who is my colleague of Engrenage Noir Lévy since the beginning in 2001. And we started talking about what does it mean to put something together. Well, maybe the focus shouldn't necessarily be on the Jewish aspect. But I know that I have work to do on that and that I will continue to work on that specific aspect. But this weekend is a little bit larger, but it is in response. It's a first response that I felt compelled to in my own experience, and that opened towards the implication of Engrenage Noir Lévy, which Joanne is going to talk about in a moment. But I want to thank Charmaine for setting me on that journey, and I'm really pleased that you're here with us tonight, and I'm pleased to welcome all of you, and I will introduce you to Joanne Chagnon, Engrenage Noir Lévy, since the beginning.